Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and editor of Ultiworld, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Ultiworld senior editor Keith Raynor. And Keith, I am 2 weeks post-vax. I went to the gym today.
Whoa.
Saw my grandparents last weekend. It's amazing time. It's an amazing time, honestly.
Feeling awfully free, huh?
I mean, free is a little strong, but like, it's nice to be able to spend time indoors with other people and feel comfortable. You know, like it's honestly been. It feels like it's been forever.
Right.
So
I get it, and I'm glad to be vaccinated. Although I just got my Tdap shot on Saturday morning. Which, you know, it's like whooping cough and tennis and some other stuff, I think, which I was recommended to get before the baby gets here. And I did not, I either got a fever from something unrelated, like a viral infection or something, or I had a reaction to the shot because it felt a lot like the second COVID shot reaction, but worse for me. So it was a tough Saturday and Sunday, but came through okay, so we're on the other end of it, fortunately. But these vaccines come with some downside too. Very minor downside. Get your vaccines, everybody.
And like none of us have been sick in so long because you can't get a cold if you're like not interacting with other people and you're always wearing a mask. Right. So like the minor, for me, minor, side effects of Vax 2 like feel worse because you've forgotten what it's like to be sick. But I would say, Keith, it's nice to know that that's just your body's reaction and that it's like causing you to be healthy, right? And you mentioned leads to health.
You mentioned forgetting how to be sick. Man, I forgot how to be healthy. Like, what am I going to do? I just signed up, registered for Summer League.
Yes.
And I don't know if I could run the length of the field right now. Like functionally.
I've been playing mini.
Yeah, I know you've managed to stay active, but to some degree, I'm feeling out of shape. So we'll see if I can bring it back together. But
yeah, I was slogging in the gym today, I'll be honest, but it's nice to get back in there and just kind of like move around a little bit. We kind of have a lot to get to today. We're going to be talking with Janel Venzant from the Premier Ultimate League. She's on the executive committee. About the PUL's return to play plan. We'll talk more about that after our interview with her coming up in a little bit. We also have a small ball segment for the first time in a while, so looking forward to getting into that. First, though, more information about the USA Ultimate Club season is now available. The guidelines for this year have been released. It's definitely a different kind of year. Just kind of like a quick summary. Teams are not going to be required to go to certain tournaments. This was already known. There aren't going to be any rankings. And as a result, national strength bids are going to be sort of predetermined based on past performance with a weighted average of what happened in 2017, 2018, and 2019. So if you go to Ultiworld, you can see the full breakdown in bids for the various three divisions. There's a little bit of other stuff in there. World Games eligibility requirements, still no announcements about how teams are going to be, earn bids to the World Club Championships for next summer. But currently the plan is still for the season to begin in June with Triple Crown Tour tournaments taking place starting in mid-July. Keith, Club Ultimate is coming back. I guess we still can't say 100% exactly what it's going to look like, but do these guidelines feel like it makes you have a sense of it being more real?
Certainly it feels more real. I'm also seeing the flexibility that USAU is trying to approach the club season with, which is probably for the best and also gives me more hope for the potential college season. But it means that this season could have a little bit of more of an amorphous shape. You mentioned like there's some other smaller things in here. Do you notice that players can play for multiple teams, basically? Like you could be on a roster and switch teams and then go back to the team that you played for before. Maybe I misread that, but
no, that's exactly correct. Up
so,
until
like,
the series, you can play with whoever you want.
so for example, people could play on a mixed team leading up into the series, but also play sometime with their single gender team. And like, granted, there's no rankings, so like maybe that won't actually matter, but it makes for a different type of feeling for the season if, you know, some so-and-so's playing with Amp and then also playing with, Truck Stop. Like, I think that's a thing that could happen here.
It could. And I have to say, I think it makes a lot of sense for that to be allowed this year. If you're not going to have rankings and you're not really going to have any kind of required tournaments, so the Triple Crown events are going to be sort of a smattering of teams that are likely going to be filled more by local area teams than sort of the top 16 teams in the country, then what's the problem? I mean, I think the whole goal is to enable people to play and like create participation opportunities. And so if the bids are already determined, and you can only be on one team in the postseason, to be clear, right. I don't really know if I have a grievance with it. I mean,
I don't think it's going to like destroy the integrity of the season or anything. I just think it'll be a little weird, and it'll add to more of the like, this doesn't feel like a normal club season feel. If we see
it's
that,
definitely going to be weird.
You know, a lot of people taking advantage of that. But what do you make of the bids?
Well, here's my first reaction to the bids. First of all, I don't think there was any great way for them to do this. A weighted average makes sense. I don't know if I would have done the weights the same way. They did 50% weighting on 2019, 35% on 2018, and 15% on 2017. I mean, it's fine. You're picking at the margins. It's probably not going to make much of a difference anyway. But the thing that stands out to me is that you've got 3 bids for each of the divisions in the Northeast and the Northwest, which, that's totally reasonable in a normal year. But at the moment, Canadian teams can't come across the border and participate. And think about how many of those bids are going to Canadian teams in a typical year. You've got at least 2 teams from Vancouver, and then 1 to 2 teams from Toronto. So it's going to open the door. I mean, and of course, we still don't know what the border situation is going to look like in September when this becomes relevant. I think there's a very good chance that border restrictions will loosen by then. But if the Canadian teams cannot compete in the USA Ultimate Series, or it's, there's a lot of hurdles and they decide not to, then I do think that, it opens the door for some teams who've never been to nationals to go, because there's just a surplus of bids with teams from the Canadian side of the border that aren't going to take them.
That was the first thing that actually jumped out at me too. And it's tough because I know that in some of these other situations, because you can see some of the same sort of thing play out in an individual division in a specific region. So for example, the Southwest, if we don't see Fury take the field this year and they have 3 bids in the women's division, what's regionals going to look like? But USA Ultimate can't really plan for individual teams whether or not they're going to play, which is a little bit different than planning for, an entire subsegment of teams to not compete, especially when we might have a sense of that. But again, that is difficult for USA Ultimate to plan for. So I think that I get why they just kind of like forge ahead. And if that means more for teams down the line, then that's what it means. And I think that this is another one of those situations. I think we were having a conversation earlier in the week about something like this in college. And I was like, I think it's just kind of like the broken eggs this year. If we're going to get this omelet, like there's just going to be some eggs broken along the way, and we just have to accept that. It was never going to be perfect here.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would say to people who are not happy about this for some reason, like what would you do instead? Like, what would be your better solution? Because I think one of the things that USA Ultimate is being very cognizant of is that they don't want to coerce people to play if they don't feel comfortable playing. And so, if you have rankings or you make these bids contingent on teams playing in the series, let's say Fury doesn't play, then they lose a bid in the Southwest, but because that's creating like very strong incentive for Fury or whoever to play, and they don't want to necessarily push people who aren't comfortable playing to play. There's the point is like we want to allow participation, but not induce participation necessarily. Even though, of course, they want people to play, not only because we want to get back on the field, but like they have a very clear financial incentives for wanting to get people back competing and buying memberships again. But I don't know if there's a better option here. They had to do something to determine the bids. Size bids don't make sense in club. That encourages weird, college program mishmash things that we used to see in the past. And if you just go flat bids, and we talked about this before, then you're giving tons of extra bids to regions that really just don't need to get multiple bids, and will be sending teams that are not that competitive to nationals. So, I mean, I think this is about as good as you could imagine, and I guess the hope is that just we still have a reasonable competitive season.
There's like 4 weeks until this season technically starts.
That's right. I mean, we've got Richmond Cup, this big prize pool mixed tournament, in literally just over a month, June 12th and 13th. So it's right around the corner. And, I think there's 10 teams signed up right now. So, it's probably happening. And so, we still are waiting to hear, like just this week, a bunch of teams went on Twitter and said, hey, here's our interest form. Check it out. We're still not sure what we're going to be doing this season, but we want to try to get the ball rolling. And that's the kind of thing I expect to see over the coming weeks. I mean, just speaking for myself, once you get the second vaccination, or you're fully vaccinated, we'll put it that way, in case you get Johnson & Johnson shot, I'm suddenly more willing to do a lot of things. I mean, I've personally been willing to play Ultimate for quite a while, but I think like just generally people are going to feel a lot more open to, hey, like I want to get back out there. Like the weather's warming up. I want to go play. I want to play Mini. I want to play Ultimate. I want to play Sevens. I want to see my teammates. So I think that, the way people feel 2 weeks ago is probably not reflective of how they're going to feel in a month. And the real question is going to be like, how much roster turnover is there? How much willingness is there going to be to have open tryouts? I think some teams will do that. Other teams won't. And so ultimately I expect to see teams play. How they will decide what they're willing to go and do, whether they want to fly to the TCT events or just play stuff locally, I think that will be very dependent on individual team decision making, but also we'll probably see some regional differences there.
We also may not see a particularly full focus competitive tournament in the entire regular season, or maybe until the very end. I think that you're going to see a lot of teams with extended tryout processes that run through much of what would qualify as this regular season. I think the focus is going to be more than ever on the postseason, which was already the case in Club Ultimate, where I think the regular season has struggled to be particularly meaningful for a large portion of the teams. So I think that you're really going to see that go out of the window for a lot of this club season, as teams focus on like being the best that they can at regionals, or not even. I mean, you may see even some competitive outfits come out and say like, this season is about us, about reconnecting, about, other, equity focused activities that we may be doing. And we're going to play Ultimate while we reconnect with one another. And that's our focus more than winning a national title this year. I really think that it's going to be a season unlike any other.
Hear me out. This is the perfect year to have done every region gets an auto bid. And then the other, you only give out 5 strength bids, not 6. And then you have a play-in tournament in San Diego before the event for the top select teams. The teams that lost in the game to go out and play a single elim tournament a day or two before the tournament, before the national championships start for the final bid.
LeBron hates play-ins, man. I don't know. We don't have LeBron's approval, so I don't know if we can go forward with this.
Except for when he used to approve it when his team was good. Just saying.
Yeah, it's funny how that works, but
I mean, I've been beating this drum, and
yes, you have.
I do think, like, because one of the things that I would have liked to have seen was an expansion of nationals to 20 teams per division. I ultimately, that was not the decision, and maybe that will look fine depending on what things look like. But if you want to boost participation, creating more national slots is probably one of the ways to do that. And this would be a way of doing that without necessarily opening up like field access issues by then having these teams who say, yeah, we want to go to San Diego. Because look, if there's ever a year where even if your team doesn't make nationals, that you want to go to San Diego and watch nationals and hang out and go out to get tacos and go to the beach and go to the bar, it is this year. I mean, my gosh, people are going to be just on pins and needles to go on a vacation. And why not create this ability to do it around the event? I mean, I keep talking about it in my mailbag that USA Ultimate needs to create events that go around nationals to encourage fans to come. And one of the ways you could do that, so here's it is. I put this in a mailbag. I'll say it again here. You charge players whatever, $100, $75 to as their player fee to come play in this play-in tournament if they finish in the game to go and they lose. And then they play in the game, they play in this single elim tournament. If they make it in, great. If they don't make it in, that $7,500 that they paid turns into a VIP ticket for the event. And then they hang out and they get to go in and get free drinks and free food or whatever at nationals, and you have packed stands.
Classic Ultimate, where the players are the fans,
I mean,
so
let's be honest.
Just lean into it.
Isn't that true though?
I mean, it is. We are our own biggest fans, basically.
And it would be a financial windfall for USA Ultimate. You'd get way more teams participating in the kind of national championships environment, even if some of them, a bunch of them, get bounced out on day 1 or day 0, if you will. I don't know. I guess the way USA Ultimate approached this is totally fair, but it's very kind of conservative as opposed to thinking about how can we do something totally different, which, we've seen other sports leagues amidst the COVID crisis deal with this in much more creative ways. And I don't want to ding USA Ultimate super hard for that, but it's just there's never a risk taking. We need to find ways to get things moving again, and they're doing the right things in terms of saying we don't want to force people to play. Get back out there when you're comfortable. That's all great, but how do we take the next step with what nationals can look like? It's a great year to try something totally different. And, weighted average of 2017 to 2019, I mean, no one's going to complain, but no one's also going to get excited either. It just sort of is.
Now I'm imagining if, we switch nationals to being through seeded buckets like we talked about, so the 1 seed isn't necessarily in a single spot. It's the 1 through 4 seed, and they get spread out across the different pools. But then the last spot in each pool is a play-in spot, and you just have 3 teams show up the day before or 2 days before, and you have to play your way in to the last spots in the pools. So,
sure.
I mean, it's the same idea, but
same idea,
different spin. But maybe we'll see it. Also, you just reminded me of how good the tacos we had in San Diego were.
San Diego is going to be great this October. It's going to be great to be there.
Not our maybe not our only trip to California for Ultimate this year.
Oh my goodness. We'll talk about that a little bit more later in the show.
The old tease.
We are going to take a quick break right now. When we come back, Janel Venzant from the Premier Ultimate League joins us here on Deep Look. Stay with us.
Today's Deep Look is brought to you in part by Elevate Ultimate. Elevate is a youth-focused disc sports organization based out of Vancouver, Canada, that is leading the way in helping kids discover and flourish in disc sports. And they've got a great new book, The Art of Coaching Youth Ultimate, that can help you do the same in your community, from how to recruit kids to how to manage problematic behaviors to running a practice. There's lots of great chapters with great content in the book, including one of my favorites, which is the one about making practices engaging for kids. You can find out more and check out the book for yourself, either by searching The Art of Coaching Youth Ultimate at Amazon or by going to elevateultimate.com and checking under the resources tab. Thanks to Elevate for their support of UltiWorld and Deep Look.
Joining us now on Deep Look is a Premier Ultimate League board member and member of the executive committee, Janel Venzant. Janel, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today. The impetus is the announcement from the PUL that the league will be having a series of tournaments around multiple geographic divisions in August as a return to the field in the 2021 PUL Championship Series. So, of course, people are very excited to be hearing that, the Ultimate is coming back and the PUL is coming back. What more can you tell us about what this is going to look like come August?
So currently, and I don't know, if y'all have I'm assuming you've had the opportunity to kind of review the plan. What is currently on the schedule is 3 weekly or like 3 weekend tournaments. We divided the teams into like regions based on limiting travel, drivability. And then there's obviously, we have a Colombian team and the team down in Austin are a little far to be driving anywhere. So then there's like one flying region. It's looking like that one will be in Portland, Maine. And so each weekend round robin with probably, it's not decided yet, but there'll probably be like sort of a, championship game within each region. We have not determined if we're going to have like a finals championship sort of later on. That's something we're still discussing and trying to figure out the feasibility of, and in reviewing, the consistently changing status of, everything considering COVID. So we'll have more. We're still like obviously refining the plan, but part of the reason for getting the plan out now is you can't ask players to play in August without telling them, right? Giving them time to get fit, giving our host teams the opportunity to book venues and to start planning the tournaments.
The league has used a lot of the past year or so to do a lot of internal work, make a lot of internal changes, and there have been some recent questions about when are we going to be able to see the league back on the field? What was really the driving force in putting a plan in place and actually looking at getting players in a competitive setting? Was that something that came from the league or from external forces, from the players? What really pushed the league to make the decision?
So when the pandemic started, right, we called off the season, started consulting with a health expert, a public health expert, to sort of try to get the lay of the land. And sort of as things have developed, we've stayed in touch with this public health expert. And as it became clear, like we started seeing vaccine production and then like availability. We're starting to get some more of the science around like, can people shed the virus if they're vaccinated? But as everything sort of developed, it became clear that like there was that we could have some form of a season, and it became trying to figure out like sort of how late we could roll things into motion and how much time we could give for continued development, because everything's happened so rapidly recently. And so I would say we probably started like seriously like hammering out a plan back in, I want to say February or March. Just, again, constantly reviewing until we were finally in a place where we felt comfortable that we weren't asking our athletes to put themselves in danger, where we could limit like the effect of the PUL, like putting people on airplanes and traveling from city to city. And so this is what we landed on.
What's the tournament structure going to look like? What distinguishes this from a club tournament where, with many of these players, of course, playing in the club division for USA Ultimate? Is there going to be a focus on trying to have spectators and doing a more, what we would consider like a showcase version of the sport? Or is this just going to be competition amongst the players like at a club tournament?
It won't look like a club tournament. If anything, I mean, right now it's looking like there'll be 3 to 4 teams per region. We haven't decided on like the final structure, but it'll probably be round robin with a championship on the next day. So you're looking at most 2 games in a day, and then like a one game day. So I think as far as like the club tournament to like what this will be comparator goes, right? We're not looking to like gas our athletes and get them injured. And also we want to understand that people haven't been playing for the last year. So I think there's also some, like, that's also a driver of the format. But I think more importantly, we want to give people the opportunity to be as fresh as they can, each game.
You mentioned that you probably have about 3 to 4 teams, and I imagine that some of that could be up in the air. We've already seen a couple teams state that they won't be competing. Some that stated that they have. Do you have a clear sense right now of what teams you expect to be participating in this series, and are there some teams that are still outstanding?
We have a pretty good idea of what it's going to look like, but we decided to give an extended opt-out deadline just in case teams found that in the next couple weeks the situation looked good enough for them to want to participate. And I think that's really going to be the theme of this season, right? Is sort of drawing out deadlines as much as we can to give as much opportunity as we can for teams to decide if they want to play, for athletes to ramp up, so for tryouts to happen, for rosters to be set. I think we'll see from the PUL just a lot of just very long deadlines, almost knocking up onto those tournament dates to get things set.
Just to follow up on my previous question, are you hoping to have spectators at these tournaments and, or have live streams, the kind of spectator focused element of this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the plan, again, right, with the league reserving the right to like modify or even, scrap the plan if there's like a horrible other wave or like a vaccine resistant strain or something like that. But yeah, I think in our talks with our public health expert, where I think comfortable with having some level of spectator, we haven't figured out exactly how many people will be able to see. And some of that comes down to like stadium availability too. Like one of our host teams went to book a facility and it was already booked. So I think when we have a better idea of like exactly what each site is, that'll help us figure out exactly like the numbers that we can actually have available.
And quickly, just on Keith's question about teams opting in, opting out, what's the plan with Columbia Revolution? Obviously, that's a required flight and an international flight. Mm-hmm. Are you hoping to have them come over? Are they interested in trying to make it over to the States for this?
Mm-hmm. We're still working that out at current. I think the plan is that they would come and play in the Portland region. And then we'll just have to take COVID precautions. So procuring testing people, making sure there's, some form of test prior to coming here and then test afterwards just to try to cover our bases.
We've talked a bit about the safe element of returning to on-field play. The other word that was in the announcement regarding this return to play is equitable. What does it mean to have an equitable return to play?
So the league in sort of restructuring itself and doing some soul searching in the last season or the last year, decided to place a greater focus on racial equity as well and anti-racism work. And so like one arm of that would be we have a anti-oppression training classroom that's going to be a mandatory training that'll be published here soon for our players and potential players to do. We haven't figured out sort of what the timeline on completion is yet, but that's something you can expect to see in the near future. Other things would be, right, Ultimate has a pipeline issue. We recruit a lot of our top talent from college, and this is America, and there's discrepancies in college attendance, and you don't see a lot of Ultimate teams at HBCUs and those sorts of things. And so the PUL is like, obviously it's not a problem we can solve in like 1 year, but sort of trying to come up with ways that we can reimagine that pipeline and to give athletes an opportunity to get out of that like horrible loop that happens. I'm sure we've all seen it with club where you have someone who who's a good athlete, got a good head on their shoulders, but they're not quite developed enough to play on an elite club team, for example. And what happens? They go to tryouts. It's a couple weekends. They get cut. And then like this just keeps happening because they're missing opportunities to improve. And so like encouraging teams to have like a lengthened tryout period, for example, this year is one way of like trying to extend opportunities for players who are like coming from places other than those elite college teams and elite club teams, setting later rostering deadlines to allow teams to like really review, and then also encouraging them not to make these big, massive traditional cuts and instead to like try to create some form of a farm system. That's all things that are like in the works. And I think we'll start to see them roll out in this season. But like I said, it's not, the pipeline problem is not something we can solve in a year. It's been an issue for Ultimate.
It's a massive systemic problem for Ultimate.
Yeah,
for sure. Are you concerned at all about losing momentum after, of course, last year with COVID not being able to have a season at all, and now having a very truncated version? I mean, I don't even know if you could quite call it a season. And, then trying to sustain that into next year, because you look across to one of the other semi-pro leagues, the AUDL is planning to have an entire full season starting in about a month that runs through with a full regular season and playoffs and a championship weekend.
Yeah.
So are you concerned on the PUL side about not being able to keep up, just like enthusiasm from within and outside the league and the momentum?
I mean, I think it's something we're going to have to like work hard to sort of reignite, and are like, kind of winding down in last year and sort of re-envisioning what the organization is going to be. Also sort of plays into there's been silence from the PUL. But I think we can probably get, at the end of the day, like people want to play Ultimate. People want, they want semi-pro, they want pro Ultimate. And I think we can, if we push the right buttons, sort of get people re-engaged. And that's one of the hopes of having some product on field this season. Right. Obviously, there's like a tension between this idea of like keeping the momentum going, especially for a young league. And when you look at how, young sports leagues fold, it's just a fact of the business. And then also having this like once in a lifetime, pandemic going on. And at the end of the day, right, like our interest in maintaining momentum has to take a second seat and be subordinated to, right, what's best for our players and what's best for like the model of league that we're trying to be. And so like in as much as there's been like a slowdown in momentum, right, we were getting off the ground and we had to pause, like it's just a fact. But I think we can probably drive that interest right back up if we are intelligent about how we approach it.
Just to jump back in here before Keith asks another question, you just alluded to the idea of the league being silent, and there has been criticism of the PUL for not being communicative with fans over the last, let's say, 6 months to a year, going long stretches without, posting on social media or posting to the website. How do you respond to that? And do you think that's fair criticism?
I mean, to take your second question first, I don't think there's necessarily a such thing as an unfair criticism in the sports world, right? Like that's part of the thing that's interesting is stories. Like we spin stories about everything, and so if people are talking about it and have an opinion about it, that's probably a good thing, and I don't want to discourage that in any way. I also think I see how people want to hear more and be more involved. But the reality is we had to sort of turn inward and do some soul searching before we could go back outward facing, especially when you're talking about adopting the work of racial equity and taking it seriously. Too many people mean well, try to approach these issues without any good background on it. And what do? You can very easily cause more harm than good by just like walking in and trying to solve the problem without, first figuring out what's going on, educating yourself. And so like to those criticisms, I would say, hey, we were stopping, we were being intentional, we were educating ourselves, we were consulting with Nina Collective, so we can look at how the PUL is structured in way, like is the league, just in adopting like a traditional organizational structure, for example, with, your president and your vice president and your secretary and those sorts of things, right? We fell just into that structure, and it wasn't something we intentionally chose. And like, is there some, level of hegemony of misogyny, of racism sort of built into these societal structures? And like, that's the sort of questions that we've been having to ask ourselves, right? Like, how do we intentionally build an organization that is sort of taking the things that we want, from capitalism and rejecting the things that we think are harmful and that is enabling us sort of foundationally to sort of honor the autonomy of our players like across the board. And there have been a lot of hard questions and a lot of hard conversations and a lot of homework. And so I would ask that, I guess, people understand that and be gracious, right? We're trying to do something that other sports leagues haven't really like stopped to do. And so it's just going to look a little bit different. But I totally understand that people want to hear about what we're doing. And I think that's great because, again, right, in sort of driving momentum, the fact that people are frustrated that they weren't hearing from us as often as they felt like they should probably means we still have a good amount of interest.
The next, I guess, sort of event in the PUL calendar is actually, I think today. We're recording this on Wednesday, May 6th. There's a town hall today, and then there's one on the 8th, I believe, for BIPOC players, and then another one on the 11th that's open, as is today's. What can people expect from these town halls? Do you have a sense of what's on the docket for these three events?
Yeah, I mean, first off, if you're tired of hearing me talk here, then like maybe don't attend those town halls because it'll probably be a lot more of me talking still. But I think the focus behind why we decided to do the town halls is one of the way, like the leagues, we're getting moving again, and like we need to drive some player engagement, and I think we owe our players like the higher level of engagement to sort of in ranking, right, the priority of like our stakeholders. And so this is an opportunity for the league to sit down and sort of just have an honest conversation with any players who are interested. I expect that we'll see return to play, like discussions on public health risks, how the tournaments are going to be funded, the financial state of the league, and what equity work we've been doing. And there will be question and answer sections as well. So our players are a pretty intelligent group, and I'm sure I can't anticipate fully all the questions that may arise.
What have you heard from players? I know the league did a survey to see what players were thinking about in terms of, return to play and kind of the state of the league. What did you hear from them?
They were generally good indicators. I think one of the and this is one of the first steps we took in really considering the return to play was the player poll, because we thought it was important to get some idea of like how like the players at the base level like safety, right, of any event we would be hosting, and you'd be asking them to travel and to be practicing with each other, and So we needed to find out how comfortable they were, if there was like a vaccine hesitance, like what percentage of people are hesitant about vaccines, who's willing to take vaccines, what the vaccine availability is. And I think just generally they were all positive indicators that like made us feel more confident in moving forward with the season, as opposed to being like, we need to push pause on this because we don't think we can do it responsibly.
Has there been any continued dialogue between the league as an organization and the other major organizers within Ultimate? The USA Ultimate, Western Ultimate League, the AUDL, partners that I know that the league has talked to in the past and organized with. Is there still ongoing conversations there about the league's return to play and about potential ways for these organizations to benefit each other?
Yeah.
Or has everything been pretty inward?
I mean, they're still on the books. Sorry, that's my dog in the background. They're still on the books. Like, I don't know what the frequency is because I'm not the one tasked with attending, but I think maybe quarterly or something meetings with all those organizations together in the same room. We have like a monthly meetup with the WL. But otherwise, yeah, we kind of came up with this return to play plan. I mean, we reviewed other leagues' plans because there's no sense in reinventing the wheel. But we didn't consult with them on, what we should do or how we thought they might, how they might have viewed what we settled on.
There's been a major leadership change as a part of, what you've been describing in terms of the way the league has kind of looked inward to see how they want to reinvent itself and have structure its various levels. You have the PUL Foundation now, as well as the PUL, sort of separate entities. But basically the entire original leadership team for the league is gone from the league or minimally involved at this point. And there's kind of a whole new group of people, including yourself, that are making decisions. Has that been? How has that gone? It's a difficult time to have it's difficult, I think, to do a leadership change, period. But then to have to do it amidst COVID and not being able to play, and like I could imagine that would be hard. So from your perspective, how has it gone?
I would say it was pretty pedal to the metal from the start, right? The board change, right? We restructured our board. We got rid of, so it used to be 2 team reps per team. We cut that number down to 1 and then created the at-large board positions. And I think everyone was onboarded at the end of October, and then the transition of the executive committee was, I think, December 31st. So like the new interim executive committee basically like got onboarded as board members and then immediately rolled into these new positions. And I mean, it was really just kind of hectic. We had to get a lay of the land. There's a lot of decisions to be made. And I think the outgoing board did a good job of sort of like signposting what like the big questions were going in. But also I think when you get a bunch of new minds in a room, then like we also come up with sort of other big questions or things to spend some time on. And so it took us a little bit to get our, to get a feel for the new group. And then from then on, it really was just like continuing the work with Nina, monitoring the pandemic, presiding over board meetings, like all the things that the previous committee was doing.
There's been some like specific instances of people asking questions about certain elements of what's happened with the league over the last, year-ish. Revolution had a tournament. There were questions about whether, the league should step in and have some sort of sanctions or, punishment for the fact that the team had this tournament amidst COVID. And then, the founder of the league, Matty Fry, got into a back and forth on Twitter, tweeted something that the league itself called racist, and said that there would be accountability for what she had said. Are there any updates on those issues that you can share with us?
Yeah, so I think we provided the Revolution update already. There's the split, right, in branding. Revolution and Revolution Pro. And I know that probably like causes a little bit of heartburn for some people because it's not different enough. But the reality is Revo existed prior to the PUL. You don't see that in a lot of sports leagues, right? And so I think it makes sense to, one, accommodate that, and then two, to put actual policies in place. So should that ever happen again, some pre-existing club team wants to join the PUL, we, are ahead of it as opposed to like catching up after the fact. In terms of like sanctions, I mean, there was no precedent for it, and it seemed a little ridiculous to penalize Revolution, right, without having anything sort of within any of our operating procedures that like would have signaled to them, that punishment was going to be the result. And so we opted for this different approach, and I think that's consistent with the league's commitment to transformative justice. So we had conversations with Revo. We settled on this, and I think it is, while not, I think the result that everyone wanted, I do think it is probably the best outcome, considering the unique structure of the league. With regards to Maddie's comments, yeah, we called them as racist, and I think everyone at the league is like firmly behind that. And I think Maddie would agree. We've had a lot of conversations with Maddie, and I realized sort of after publishing the tweet, and I had some part in crafting that when we said we'd be forthcoming about how accountability, that process would happen, that sounds a little doom and gloom as well. And that's not the intent behind it, right? I think in discussion with Maddie, and Maddie's agreed to pay for like sort of a facilitated discussion, but with our equity consultant. And that's kind of where we are right now, right? We've discussed with Maddie, we've settled on sort of, we pulled in our equity consultant. We're scheduling a time to like sort of dig a lot deeper into it. And we'll provide more updates as they happen with that. But I do think it's important to say like that Maddie made an error. She did a racism effectively, and we can call it that. But like part of the structure of the PUL is like acknowledging that in trying to build this machine, people will make mistakes. And like if they're willing to come to the table, right, and to repent and let's get moving. And so like accountability in this situation might look different than if someone was like, I did it, I'll do it again. And, damn all of y'all for telling me otherwise. Right. So I think in the future, and generally with how the PUL responds to these sorts of things, like it's going to be a context specific response. And so slower moving sometimes.
Just broadly, how are you feeling about the state of the league? This is a hard time for any ultimate Frisbee organization or business. And so I'm just curious, like, from whatever perspective you want to say, like enthusiasm, financial perspective, just like broadly, how do you feel about where the PUL stands as you get ready to come towards this August return to play?
I mean, honestly, we're really excited to just finally get things going back, like to get back to being a Frisbee league, right? To like having people play, to having fans, and to streaming, like that sort of thing is really exciting because it's while this work is like truly meaningful work, right? The joy that we have is in presenting this product as well. That said, I mean, obviously we're a new league. We don't have a ton of money, and so like there are financial pressures that we're looking to resolve, and like trying to come up with ways other than crowdfunding for money, right? Like trying to find actual donors and sponsorships that can carry us through in the long haul. Because I think crowdfunding is only good enough as a sort of to start up, right? And then at some point it's got to start carrying itself. And so that's like the other thing that the league has been like heavily focused on is how are we branding ourselves? How are we raising funds? Because at the end of the day, if you don't have money, you can't have a sports league, right? So that's I think the big sort of opportunity / threat of what the PUL is facing right now. But I think there's some good indicators amongst the team's ability to raise money locally and then on the national level. So hopefully we're here to stay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for making some time for us and joining us today. And best of luck with the upcoming truncated season.
Yeah, thank y'all. It's always a pleasure to talk with y'all.
Janel Venzant with us here on Deep Look. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Deep Look. Great to talk with Janel and hear a little bit more about what's going on over in the PUL. Keith, what are your takeaways from what Janel had to say?
I found that the Premier Ultimate League's plan to move forward with return to play sounds a little more solidified than I got from the tone of their initial announcement. And we haven't really seen any real communication since then. So to hear that it sounded like they had the commitment of a pretty good number of teams, that they were in the process of booking their locations and had some sort of structures in mind. It makes sense that they had more behind the scenes than they did when they made the announcement, but it definitely sounded like they were, I wouldn't say full steam ahead or anything, but we're planning on moving forward with something that had a shape to it already.
I will be a lot more excited by this whole thing if they have an actual championship weekend type event with the teams that kind of qualify out of each region. However they decide to define that. I mean, they have 3 regions, right? So maybe you have 3 teams plus a wild card team based on point diff, or you do 2 teams from each region. I mean, there's various ways you could do it, but I mean, I'm glad they have some kind of plan to get back out there, but a one weekend type like little round robin where somebody gets crowned the sort of pseudo regional champion is not super exciting to me as a fan. I totally understand where, everything that Janelle is saying about the COVID situation. I just hope that they plan to do a championship weekend type thing. And if they decide ultimately that they can't do it because of COVID reasons, fair enough. But I hope that that's in the cards, I guess I would say.
Charlie, did you happen to watch Mortal Kombat, the movie, which came out on HBO Max streaming platform?
So I am an HBO Max subscriber, as well as an AT&T shareholder, but I have not watched the Mortal Kombat yet. I did see it in the queue.
Have you heard the top complaint, I think, about the Mortal Kombat movie?
No. It's probably that Sub-Zero didn't do enough cool stuff, because that was the best
let me tell
character.
You, it is the same as your complaint about the PUL. No tournament. So it's the.
So wait a minute. They did a Mortal Kombat movie that had no tournament?
Yes, that is accurate. But
I don't understand how that's possible.
I don't actually have a problem within the movie, because within the movie a tournament is just a reason for them to fight a bunch, and they fight a bunch. So I got the reason, the end result of the tournament anyway. But in sport, we want the structure to help inform the competition, and without it, it just feels like showcase games. So it's hard to build narrative around just a weekend of games that ultimately don't feel like they matter because they don't crown a champion per se. And it does feel achievable. I mean, even if a round robin is not a great way to declare a champion, but if that's what they had to do, if they had 3 regions and then they took the champion of each of those regions and had another round robin weekend, not my favorite idea, but it's better than nothing to me. I would prefer that to no actual end tournament.
Or to nothing at all,
Right.
Well, we're going to talk in our subscriber bonus segment about some of our ideas about what the PUL could have done. I don't know which tense to use here for their, what will certainly be a truncated season of some kind. So join us for that. ultiworld.com/subscribe. You can get the bonus podcast episodes and a whole lot more for less than $4 per month. I have to say, I really appreciated what Janelle had to say on many of the issues that we brought up. In a way, it's like I want to hear more of that voice and that level of clarity and forthrightness than we're seeing from the PUL. And I don't know if that's because, like, I don't know if there's like too much, concern about the PR, or there's, too much consensus building that has to take place for them to put out a press release or some kind of statement. But like, think about how much more we just learned from that interview than was in the release about this sort of concept in the first place. I mean, that's like the first thing you said. I feel like the PUL would do well to have more of this. And I'm not saying to come on Deep Look every week or whatever.
But you can, if you want this to be your primary way to release news. Like,
but like, come out and say that stuff. Put out a clip, be more communicative with fans. Because that's been what so much of the criticism about the league over the last 6 months has focused on. It's this sort of like total lack of anything at times. Months go by with no updates. And like, I don't know, put out some clips of sweet plays.
And I understand
there's so many things they could do.
I understand Janel saying, like, we're glad that people are like miss us and want us to play, but like, but you can't waste that capital. Like, people will not stay engaged for, like, it doesn't just happen. They don't just attach to your brand and stay forever without you doing anything. Like, I worry a little bit that the deprioritization of communicating with fans, of engaging with fans, is going to hurt the league in a way that maybe they didn't anticipate. Maybe they thought they had more runway there. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they will. Maybe people will be like, you know what? We understand where you're coming from. We love what the league is about. And so, we're willing to look past the fact that there was a lack of engagement there. But there certainly are folks, I think, who will be like, I don't know what's going on with the league. I can't count on the fact that I will. So, like, I'm just going to take my time and my money and spend it elsewhere. That's a potential problem that the league can run into, having deprioritized having a relationship with the community, which is dangerous when you're basically a community-based organization.
I mean, I'm just concerned that the league is going to lose a lot of steam. I mean, it's easy to forget they've only had one season. And they're essentially missing 2 seasons. It's great they're going to get back out there, but if all they do is these little regional tournaments, I mean, that's going to be exciting for the couple fans in the area that are able to kind of tune in and pay attention, and hopefully they have live streams all set up for that. But I'm worried about the trajectory. I mean, I know it's really hard. There's no question because of COVID to kind of figure out something bigger. But I hope that they can do that, because I think it's important. And like, there's so much excitement in these individual communities where these teams are located to have this action. I will say this. People say time heals all. Frisbee heals all. So many of these conflicts, I think, are going to start to fix themselves a little bit once people can play. And people can be fans again. So
and see each other as human beings again.
Yeah. Less time on the computer at home, and like more time out and about with the people who make up the community.
I will say, as I feel like I say every time that we have the PUL on, though, I do give them a little bit of leash, because one of the things I've always appreciated about the league is that they have a boldness and a willingness to do things differently and not just do things the way everybody else does them. And so some of the times when things feel like I don't get why they're doing it this way, maybe it's like, this is the price of an experimental league that tries to do things differently. Sometimes it works out great, and other times it doesn't work out as well. So you kind of have to give them that space to try and have some errors and some wins. So I try and keep that in mind when I'm thinking about the Premier Ultimate League and how I view their decision-making processes.
Let's play some small ball. College Nationals has had a location and dates announced. It's going to be in Norco, California. Sounds like Narcos, but it's Norco. North Corona that's the abbreviation, if you can believe it. It seems only appropriate for this COVID year. It's going to be so it's about an hour east of Los Angeles, in between LA and Palm Springs, and it will be December 17th through 20th. So that is starting on a Friday, running through a Monday, and in California, weather should be pretty nice at that time of year.
No snow.
No snow.
Well, I mean, who knows with the way weather is these days, but probably no snow.
Couple things that come to my mind. I'm hoping teams can get cheap plane tickets. It can be a very expensive time of year to fly. I think it's just early enough before the Christmas time flight price increases that it won't be too bad. But that, and then also finals. How is that going to fit in? I've already heard from some schools that have finals, not even just like that Friday, the 17th, but over the weekend and into the following week. I don't know how common that is, but I do think that that's going to be an issue, and it's possible that it could preclude some teams from being able to compete because their universities won't let them travel.
Yeah, the dates in general for college, I mean, I don't know how quarterly schools factor in here either, which are some pretty significant, I think, ultimate universities are on the quarter system, and I don't know how they're impacted by both the beginning and ending of this season. But there's always some folks who struggle with the calendar. For most teams, it's around regionals weekend, although for D3, it does seem to crop up for nationals a little more frequently than it does for D1. But that's a challenge that there's not really anything that can be done about it. It's just an obstacle that can't really be worked around. Are you familiar with this field site? Have you been to Norco?
I have not, but I know that this is a site that's been used for other Frisbee events, including club regionals, as recently as 2019.
Do you know, is it a real place, or are we going to be in the cow farms like when we go to Stevenson?
I don't know, but I think it's more like a real place.
Okay, good. That makes it a bit more appealing. Yeah, like, it may be close enough to other real places that, there'll be stuff to do, and that's good. But I'm not trying to go somewhere where there's 4 restaurants or something like that, and every team just packs it. That would not be great. But
I mean, here's what I'd recommend. If you're pretty confident your team's going to go to nationals, get your whole family to go out to California for the holidays. Stay in Palm Springs. Palm Springs is so nice. I went to Palm Springs in January a couple years ago, and it's just gorgeous. You're in the desert, and you can go to Joshua Tree, and you can enjoy the retro vibes of Palm Springs.
Just Christmas, right, Christmas in Cali? Is that what you're advocating for? Just your family goes out there for 2 weeks,
There you go. So, I mean, I'm excited. I guess I'm a little worried, but at the same time, as we discussed earlier, it's very difficult to figure out when USA Ultimate could have had this tournament that would have been better. You can't really go any later because you run into the holidays. When's if you're going to go earlier, it's even worse for finals conflicts.
When's the last time the college championships were on the West Coast?
2004. Corvallis, Oregon.
Yeah.
Or 2005, I think.
All right. Yeah. Well, it's the West Coast gets their wish. I know that there's long been clamoring for nationals to go back to the West Coast, although I doubt that this was exactly what they had in mind.
So yeah, we've got San Diego Club Nationals, October. December, College Nationals in LA, basically. Then April, Huntington Beach, essentially LA, for Beach Worlds. And are there other California? There's a Select Flight Invite West will be in California this club season. So we got a lot of California Ultimate coming up.
I'm for it. California, I think, has been mostly a good place to play Ultimate. I've had some good experiences out there.
You have. We'll leave that exercise to the longtime listeners. The WIFDIF announced that there will be new polling rules for the World Games 2022 in Birmingham, Alabama. And the rule is that there are going to be set gender ratio rules. So the 4-3 will switch every 2 points. So, 4 men and then 4 women. And whichever gender has more players on the field, a member of that group has to pull. So essentially, it's going to mean that, half the pulls in the game will be from male matching players, half from female matching. So this is something that's been kind of proposed in the past and talked about a lot about, how do you make sure that it's not just men pulling all the time in mixed competition? And WIFDIF is trying it out at the World Games. And what do you think about this, Keith?
I love this. I'm so for this. Just force the hand of people. They will let the teams and the players adapt. Now at the World Games, I think it's going to look great because you're dealing with the best players in the world. And, that's another reason why the World Games has been such a great showcase of mixed ultimate. That what happens at the World Games doesn't necessarily hold for what it's going to look like and the rest of mixed competition. But I have had trouble finding anything that I don't like about the idea of more women pulling in mixed ultimate. Like, it just seems good to me.
Yeah. And Ravi Vasudevan wrote the article for UltiWorld and appropriately used a photo of Elizabeth Mosquera pulling, who I'm sure will do the bulk of the pulling for the Colombian team. They might have her pull every point if it was possible.
Honestly, if you made me choose, if our two options were literally only women matching players can pull or teams get to pick, I would pick women matching players only can pull for just period. I just think it's better this way. This is better for a more equitable game.
Yeah. I don't really have a lot to add. I think it's a great time to give this a shot and see how it works. And I think everybody will just be like, oh yeah, this is great. We should do this all the time. And then it will become a part of the division.
I'm really hoping that this is one of those like quickly adopted things that becomes a part of USA Ultimate as well.
Play more disc golf, folks. You'll become a better puller. The Columbus Aquarium.
You're making me think how good would Elizabeth Mosquera be at disc golf? Has she played disc golf? Do we know?
I've been saying it. No, I mean, I don't know. I don't think there's tons of disc golf in South America just in general. And I've actually emailed a little bit with some folks in Colombia about like kind of the fledgling disc golf scene. I think there's a couple courses and some people getting excited about it. If Elizabeth Mosquera committed to disc golf, she could be like a very high level touring professional. I'm fully confident.
I'd love it.
Fully confident in that. If she's looking for a more lucrative path to disc sports stardom, I might recommend that. The Greater Cleveland Aquarium tweeted at Deep Look Pod. Hashtag Hydra, hashtag Morphlaxis, hashtag Deep Look. There was some sort of mistake here, but what was this video that they tweeted us?
So it seems like there is a Deep Look. I don't know if it's a podcast or just like they do video series, but this is a video about a polyp called a Hydra that seems to be able to like regenerate itself so that it lives indefinitely or at least for a really long time. But like we're talking about an organism so small like that it's like lining is like 2 cells thick and it's like as long as a grain of rice. It doesn't have a brain. Its head is just tentacles and a mouth.
Clearly this is our official animal of the pod.
I mean, I guess it is now.
Shout out to the Columbus Aquarium.
Yeah, we appreciate and to Hydras. I don't know if there's still if there have been some Hydra teams in Ultimate.
Is Virginia not still Hydra?
They are. I think they had to change their Twitter handle, so I think they're still Hydra. And at one point, I think Ole Miss was also Hydra, the men's team. Maybe they are now. I'm not sure.
Okay. Last note here today in our small ball segment, AUDL Game of the Week has been announced. These are the games that will be airing after the fact on Wednesdays on Fox Sports 2. Got the full slate of games lined up. Keith, any thoughts on the schedule? I'm not going to read off the whole thing, but any games that stand out to you?
Boston at Raleigh week 3, get a chance to see Boston on the big stage, see what they can do against one of the top teams in the league.
That's going to be a tough matchup.
One. Yeah,
for their first big screen exposure.
But hey, you go out there and get a win, and the confidence is flying high. Plus, it helps you in the division. Obviously, Raleigh at New York in week 10, that's a big one. This is a very Raleigh heavy schedule. There's a lot of Raleigh Flyers on here.
4 games they get in 12 weeks. That's twice as many games as New York
or Dallas,
which is hard to believe.
I think Dallas only has 2 as well.
Dallas has 2. That's right.
So it's a lot of Raleigh. You're gonna be seeing a lot of Raleigh this year, but they should be pretty good as usual. Not enough Chicago, I would say. I think Chicago
they had to like go to the league and make some backroom deals, bribery, to get Dallas out of the division, so they can finally go to championship weekend. I mean, they're going to be good, but like they're inevitably going to get Dallas in semis, right? At championship weekend and lose.
That sounds
like that's
right.
just like that's like a guarantee. That's a guarantee. You heard it here. I guarantee it right here.
Yeah, I think I just noticed the Alley Cats have 3 games. So like we only get 1 Chicago game, 1 Pittsburgh game, but 3 Alley Cats games. It's kind of surprising.
I don't really know. I maybe that just some of this surely has to do with just like setting the schedule up in a way that works. I think that we will maybe understand the schedule a little bit more in a couple weeks, because they're trying to do some extra games as well that are not part of the game of the week schedule, but that's going to require their production team to be sort of in the same geographical area in order to sort of drive to those games. So I think that could have an impact here. But yeah, I'm not sure I'm super excited to watch that Alley Cats team this year. They've lost some talent. I want to see Chicago.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to see Chicago. I think that's the team to watch. And we get one Chicago game. That's it. Week 1.
Yeah. So Chicago, I think, in a little bit of the short straw here.
Well, hope you better be a Flyers fan. The games of the week start June 5th. That's the second day of the season. June 4th, there's some games on Friday. Lots of games on Friday this year. Oh
my gosh! And with AUDL's new international broadcast, they're just gonna have a worldwide Flyers fans network. Everyone's gonna all the international folks are gonna be Flyers fans because it's all they watch.
That's right. All right. Well, that is going to do it for our show today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're talking PUL competition structure potential for the 2021 COVID abridged season in our subscriber bonus. So we hope you join us for that. For Keith Raynor, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look.